I never thought I'd find myself in such a situation. It all began at my mother-in-law Sarah's birthday. My wife, Catherine, was supposed to fly to Chicago for a business trip the next day, so we decided to celebrate the day before. Sarah always looked younger than her years. At 45, she maintained a slim figure and natural charm that had apparently been passed down to my wife. I had noticed this before, but never allowed myself to think about my mother-in-law in that way. "John, you'll help Mom with the cleanup tomorrow, right?" Catherine asked while packing for her trip. "You know how many guests she invited." "Of course, no problem," I replied, not suspecting where this decision would lead. The evening began as usual. Sarah's house filled with guests, clinking glasses and laughter. I watched as she gracefully moved between guests in her dark blue dress that perfectly accentuated her figure. "Thanks for staying to help," she said, accidentally touching my arm when we bumped into each other in the kitchen. For a moment our eyes met, and I felt something unusual in the air. Catherine left early to get enough sleep before her early flight. The guests gradually departed, leaving behind typical post-party chaos. "Should we open another bottle of wine?" Sarah suggested when we finished the main cleanup. "That excellent California one is still left." I knew I should have refused, but fatigue and the wine consumed earlier had dulled my common sense. We sat on the couch, discussing the evening. Sarah told funny stories about Catherine's childhood, and I couldn't help but notice how she gradually moved closer. At one point, she stood up to adjust the music, and I found myself admiring her walk. "You know, John," her voice became quieter when she returned to the couch, "sometimes I envy Catherine." Our knees touched. The air grew thick with tension. I could smell her perfume, a gentle floral scent with notes of vanilla. Her hand accidentally brushed mine, sending a shiver through my body. "Sarah, we shouldn't," I began, but she had already placed her hand on my shoulder. Her fingers gently slid along my neck, making me forget all words. "Shh," she whispered, moving closer. Her breath tickled my cheek. The moment stretched into eternity. We looked into each other's eyes, understanding that the next move would change everything. Her lips were so close. The first kiss was uncertain, almost innocent. But it was followed by a second, more passionate one. My hand slid around her waist, feeling her warmth through the thin fabric of her dress. Sarah exhaled softly, pressing closer. Time lost all meaning. We kissed like teenagers until her hands began unbuttoning my shirt. The last remnants of self-control dissolved in the room's dim light. "Maybe we should go upstairs," she whispered, looking at me with misty eyes. I silently nodded, no longer able to resist the desire. What happened in her bedroom was like the sweetest and most torturous dream. Moonlight played on her skin, her dress slowly slipped to the floor. Every touch, every kiss was filled with passion and tenderness. We dissolved into each other, forgetting everything in the world. Her quiet moans and whispers of my name were driving me crazy. Only when the first rays of sun began breaking through the curtains did the reality of what happened crash down on me with full force. I carefully got up, trying not to wake Sarah. She looked so peaceful in her sleep that my heart clenched with pain and guilt. The drive home seemed endless. Each traffic light gave time for new torturous thoughts. Fragments of memories from the past night swirled in my head. Her touches, kisses, passionate embraces, and all of it mixed with a sense of irreparable mistake. At home, I first thing got into the shower, as if trying to wash away what had happened. But the scent of her perfume seemed to be embedded in my skin. The phone on the nightstand blinked with a message from Catherine. "Landed safely, love you." I felt nausea rising in my throat. What had I done? How would I look into my wife's eyes now? And most importantly, how to forget what happened when every time I close my eyes, I see Sarah? Exhausted by the sleepless night and torments of conscience, I collapsed onto the bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Images of the past night kept flashing before my eyes again and again, making my heart race with a mixture of shame and desire. The next few days turned into torture. I couldn't eat or sleep normally. Every phone ring made me jump. What if it was Sarah? Or worse, what if Catherine had suspected something? "Honey, you seem strange," said my wife during our evening video call. "Is everything okay?" "Just tired," I lied, feeling my ears starting to burn treacherously. "Swamped at work." Sarah didn't call or write, and this was both a relief and torment. I tried to keep myself busy with work, but my thoughts constantly returned to that night, to her touches, to how she said my name. On the third day, a message came, "We need to talk. Come at 7. I should have refused. Should have written that it was a mistake. Instead, at exactly 7, I stood at her door, feeling my heart beating wildly. Sarah opened the door in a simple house dress, and my breath caught. She looked so vulnerable, so desirable. "John," she began, letting me into the house. "What happened?" "It was a mistake," I interrupted, though every cell in my body screamed otherwise. "A mistake." She came closer, and I caught the familiar scent of her perfume. "Then why are you here?" Her eyes met mine, and all the prepared words evaporated. We both knew what would happen next. This time everything was different, more conscious but no less passionate, no whine, no excuses. Just us, our forbidden passion and maddening desire. Afterward, lying in her bed, we finally talked. "What are we doing, Sarah?" I whispered, staring at the ceiling. "Something terrible," she replied, pressing against me. "I love my daughter, you love your wife, but we can't stop," I finished for her. Returning home, I stood in the shower for a long time, trying to wash away the guilt. My phone was blowing up with messages from Catherine. She was talking about the conference, sharing photos, planning our vacation together. And I sat looking at these messages, feeling like the ultimate scoundrel. But the scariest part was that even then I knew this wasn't the end. No matter how much I despised myself, no matter how many times I swore it was the last time, I knew I would come back to Sarah. Catherine was due to return in 4 days. 4 days that turned into a whirlwind of secret meetings, passionate nights, and agonizing morning regrets. We met either at her place or in a hotel on the other side of town. Each time we promised each other it would be the last meeting, and each time we lied. "We have to stop," Sarah said during our last meeting before Catherine's return. "This will destroy everything." "I know," I replied, kissing her shoulder. "But how?" She remained silent. We both knew the question was rhetorical. How do you stop something that's already out of control? How do you return to normal life when every cell in your body remembers another person's touch? At the airport, meeting Catherine, I smiled and hugged her, playing the role of loving husband. But inside, everything tightened at the thought that in a couple of days there would be a family dinner where I would see Sarah again. Where we would have to sit at the same table, smile, and pretend nothing had happened. "I missed you so much," Catherine whispered, kissing me. "Me too," I replied, feeling something break inside from this lie. The drive home turned into torture. Catherine talked non-stop about the conference, and I nodded and smiled, trying not to think about the fact that just a few hours ago I had been kissing her mother. A month passed. Catherine often traveled for business. She had been promoted to regional manager. And I continued meeting with Sarah, though each time I swore to myself it would be the last. "Mom, you seem different lately," Catherine noticed during a family dinner. "Like you've gotten younger? Are you in love?" I choked on my wine. Sarah just smiled mysteriously. "Maybe." "Really? Who is he?" Catherine perked up. "Darling, some secrets should remain secrets," Sarah replied, throwing me a quick glance. Such moments were maddening. We learned to play this dangerous game. Casual touches, secret glances, ambiguous phrases. Every family gathering turned into an exquisite torture. Once Catherine caught us in the kitchen, I was helping Sarah with the dishes, and we were standing too close to each other. "How sweet that you get along so well," she said, hugging us both. "I'm so glad my husband and my mom have become real friends." I felt Sarah shudder at these words. Our meetings became increasingly risky. We met in hotels, at her country house, once even in my office after work. Passion mixed with adrenaline, making each encounter even more intense. "You know," Sarah said one time, lying in my arms, "sometimes I imagine that we could be together, really together." "Don't," I interrupted her. "We both know it's impossible." "Why? Because I'm older, or because I'm your wife's mother?" "Because it will destroy everything. Are you really ready to lose your daughter?" She remained silent, but I could feel her crying into my shoulder. That evening, what we feared most happened. Catherine called when we were together. "Honey, I decided to come back early. Flight's in an hour. Will you pick me up?" I froze, looking at Sarah. She lay beside me, and I could read the same fear in her eyes. "Of course, I'll pick you up," I answered. trying to speak normally. "Great, and let's stop by Mom's? I missed her so much!" Sarah, hearing this, sat up sharply in bed. We both understood. We had less than an hour to put everything in order and pretend nothing was happening. "Maybe tomorrow instead." I tried to save the situation. "It's already late." "Oh, please, I bought Mom an amazing gift in Paris." The next hour turned into a mad rush. We hurriedly tidied the house, aired out the rooms. Sarah changed clothes and redid her makeup. I rushed to the airport, praying I wouldn't be late. Catherine was radiant, showing off the gifts. I drove to Sarah's house, feeling cold sweat running down my back. What if we missed something? What if she notices? Sarah met us in a bathrobe, pretending she was about to take a bath. "Surprise!" Catherine shouted, hugging her mother. I looked at them, the two most important women in my life, and felt something breaking inside. How long could we continue this farce? And how would it all end? Catherine began to suspect something. Woman's intuition? Or had Sarah and I become too careless? "You've changed," she said one morning. "Become sort of distant, and you're constantly checking your phone." "Just lots of work," I lied as usual, deleting another message from Sarah. "And Mom's been strange lately, too," Catherine continued, carefully watching my reaction. "Haven't you noticed?" I shook my head, trying to appear indifferent. Inside, everything went cold. "You know what's strangest?" She came closer. "You both changed around the same time, after my first business trip to Chicago." I felt goosebumps run down my spine. Could she know? "Honey, you're exaggerating." I tried to hug her, but she pulled away. "Am I? Then why did I find her scarf in your car? That silk one with flowers?" I froze. Damn scarf! Sarah had forgotten it last time when we met at the motel outside town. "Oh, that. She left it when we went to the cemetery, visiting her husband's grave," I managed, mentally thanking myself for the quick thinking. Catherine softened. "Really? Mom didn't mention you went—" "She didn't want to upset you. You know how hard that date is for her." Crisis averted, but I understood we were on the verge of exposure. That evening I met Sarah at our usual place, a small cafe on the outskirts of town. "She suspects something," I said, nervously stirring my cold coffee. "We need to stop this." Sarah was silent, looking out the window. In the light of the setting sun, she looked especially beautiful. "I know," she finally said, "but I can't stop thinking about you, John, about our meetings, about how you—" "Shh," I looked around. "Not here." "Then where? In another dirty motel? In a car? In an empty parking lot? I'm tired of hiding, John." Her eyes filled with tears. Maybe we should tell her everything," she quietly suggested. "Are you crazy? It would destroy Catherine." "And we're not destroying her now, every day, with every lie?" I couldn't find an answer. That night I couldn't sleep. Catherine slept peacefully beside me while I lay thinking about Sarah's words. Maybe she was right? Maybe it would be better to honestly confess everything? The phone quietly vibrated. Message from Sarah. "I can't take this anymore. I'm telling her everything tomorrow." My heart stopped. With trembling fingers, I typed a response. "Don't you dare. I'll do it myself." "When?" "Tomorrow. Come to our house at 7. I'll tell her everything." "Are you sure?" "No, but you're right. This can't go on." After sending the message, I looked at my sleeping wife. How do you tell someone you love that you're sleeping with their mother? How do you explain something you can't understand yourself? In the morning, I saw Catherine off to work as usual, kissed her goodbye, said I loved her. Then I sat down to write a letter, a long, confused explanation of what had happened. But what words could justify such betrayal? At 6 in the evening, I sat in our living room, watching the clock. 1 hour until Catherine's return. 1 hour until Sarah's arrival. The phone vibrated again. Message from Catherine. "Heading home. I have a surprise for you." I went cold. She never comes home before 7. Time stood still. I sat in the living room, caught between two messages. Catherine coming home early. Sarah arriving at 7. Disaster was inevitable. The front door opened at 6:30. Catherine entered beaming, holding some envelope in her hands. "Honey, I have amazing news!" She threw herself around my neck. "I'm being transferred to headquarters. We're moving to New York." I froze. "New York? That's 6 hours away from here. 6 hours from—" "But what about—" I began. "I figured everything out. Double the salary, company apartment. This is our chance to start a new life." A new life? How ironic. "By the way, I already called Mom. She's coming over to celebrate. Can you believe it? She wasn't even surprised when I said to come at 7, as if she knew." Everything inside me dropped. At 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Sarah stood on the threshold, pale but determined. "Mom, come in quickly!" Catherine pulled her into the house. "We have such news." "So do we," Sarah said quietly, looking at me. We sat in the living room. Catherine was pouring champagne, talking about New York. Sarah was silent, turning the glass in her hands. I could feel the seconds slipping through my fingers. "Catherine," Sarah suddenly said, "we need to talk." "Of course, Mom. I was just about to discuss how often you could visit us." "No, honey, about something else." I stood up. "Sarah, don't—" "We must, John. Enough lies." Catherine looked from her mother to me. "What's going on?" "John and I," Sarah began. "Are pregnant," Catherine suddenly blurted out. Sarah and I froze. "What?" I asked. "Mom's pregnant," Catherine repeated with a smile. "I saw the test in her bathroom last week and noticed how she covers her stomach. That's why you've been acting so strange, right? Afraid to tell?" Sarah turned even paler. "And I know who the father is," Catherine continued. I felt the room start to spin. "It's Steve, right? That doctor you've been secretly seeing? I saw you at the restaurant a month ago." Dead silence fell. "Yes," Sarah suddenly said. "It's Steve's." I stared at her, not believing my ears. "Oh my God, Mommy." Catherine threw herself at Sarah to hug her. "Why didn't you say anything? This is wonderful. I'm going to have a little brother or sister, and right before our move. Now I understand why you weren't surprised about the meeting time. You wanted to tell us yourself." Sarah hugged her daughter, looking into my eyes over her shoulder. In that look was all the pain in the world. "I'm so happy for you, Mom," Catherine chirped. "John and I will fly in every month, right, honey?" "Right," I forced out. Later, when Catherine went to the kitchen for another bottle, Sarah whispered, "Goodbye, John. Take care of her." "Sarah, the baby." "Not yours," she cut me off. "Steve really exists. I lied one last time for my daughter's sake." 2 weeks later, we moved to New York. Catherine regularly calls her mother, discusses the future baby, plans visits, and I continue living, keeping inside me the story of one hot summer that should never have happened. They say forbidden fruit is sweet, but no one talks about how bitter the aftertaste can be. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.